Coaching Success. Oh, what's going on, Coaching Success Radio? Today's show is all about the things that small businesses do that keep them small. As I build my coaching business, I want to know how to effectively serve clients and make more money doing it. This podcast will pull back the curtain to reveal exactly how successful coaches are building their empires. Join me as I engage with top coaches from all over the world to discover their secrets. No theatrics and no theory, just real-life strategy. My name is William Winterton, and this is Coaching Success Radio. All right, let's talk about time management, and let's talk about how to keep your small business from staying small forever. If you are in this coaching world, you're probably a small business. Most coaches are. Most coaches don't have a team of 300 or 400 people working for them. Tony Robbins and those kind of people are kind of the exceptions, right? You and me, we're probably working by ourselves or have a few VAs that we've hired out, but for the most part, 90% or more of the work that's being done is by us. So we get into this rut of trying to do everything ourselves, and we finally get to where we start hiring some team members around us, but we still have this small business mentality. And there are several mistakes, a number of mistakes that small business owners make that keep their small business from growing. So I'm not talking about getting to the point where you're making 7-8 figures a year. I'm talking about just simply doing your business better and doing maybe the same amount of volume and revenue that you're making, but what if you had way more time, way more freedom in your job? If that sounds interesting to you, I want to introduce you to Kris Ward. Kris is the author of Win the Hour, Win the Day. It's on Amazon. I got a link down below. It's a phenomenal book. She's basically just a time management genius, and I found her, brought her onto the program because she shares so much wisdom, so much knowledge in this field, but she's just a great person. She's a genuine, fun spirit. It's a great conversation, and she's got a whole bunch of different ideas and strategies for you, but we're going to outline the tips, outline the mistakes that small business owners tend to make. And if you fall into this category, she's going to tell you some pitfalls to watch out for and some ways to work around maybe your current situation and do things a little bit better to start bringing in some more money with less work. So if that sounds interesting to you, I want to introduce you to Kris Ward. Hey, welcome to Coaching Success Radio. William here, and today is super important for anybody who's in a small business and trying to grow their business, which we all are, right? We're all in this world of coaching and trying to become more and more successful. And what that means sometimes is letting go of some of those old habits that are keeping our small business small. And today I have an expert on with me who basically her whole life and purpose is to help organize your small business and create systems that allow you to fulfill your passion and do all the things you're truly enjoying about your business without letting all the systems and all the muck kind of keep you stuck where you are. So I want to introduce my friend, Kris Ward. Kris, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
And I have to be honest with you, I am not wired like this. Like, if I don't know much about you, but I would imagine that if I were to take a look in your closet, you'd have everything kind of like organized and figured out some kind of a systematic way. Whereas for me, literally, it's like a hide and seek every time I try and find a T-shirt to wear. I don't know. So I don't. Am I right? Am I wrong? I don't know.
You know what? Here's the truth. I am an organized person, but that actually has a limitation, because what happens to people like myself is you just think, oh, you know what? I just need to be more organized. So someone like you actually does better when we start to put Win the Hour, Win the Day strategies in place, because what we're doing is fundamental stuff that's going to change the foundation of what you're doing. But when you're organized, you don't change the structure. You just try to wind yourself tighter and think, oh, I can reorganize this. And you're just reorganizing the same mess. So in your case, that would actually work to your advantage.
Okay, I'm going to have you talk to my wife as soon as we're done here so that she gets off my back about that. That'd be fantastic. You mentioned your company, Win the Hour, Win the Day. Talk briefly about that, and then I'm going to jump right into the content, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, great. No problem. So what we do is we help you get rid of 80% of your to-do list, 100% of your guilt, so that you can stop doing things you hate that you don't have time for, and really reclaim your life with an easy and permanent fix. And my journey is, I'm not like a time management guru that just jumped up one day and said, I'm going to teach other businesses. I have a marketing and branding company, and I was in business, I would say, for about 4 years, and I was working crazy hours. In fact, I talk about this in the book. I almost electrocuted myself one day just because I was in a rush, and I just thought something had to change. So I started to feverishly examine productivity and really dive in, like, there's got to be an easier way. And because I was organized, and because I didn't like the idea of time management restricting me and my freedom, and because I did get a lot done in a day, I just had a big pushback about all that. So I started looking at it differently. There's got to be something simpler. And I made some significant changes, and I really pulled back my schedule from maybe working 16 hours a day to like 7. And you know what? Luckily I did, because it wasn't but 2 or 3 years later, my husband had been diagnosed with colon cancer and I had been pulled away from the business. And why I tell you that is because when I returned to my business, really I was gone for almost 2 years. And when I returned after his death, my clients were not aware of my absence. They had no idea. When it became public, they were shocked. And so they started to ask me, well, how did you manage all that? How did you manage a company that when I returned, it not only survived, but it thrived? And so then I started working with them, and it was really wonderful for me in the grieving process to help people and help them get back their life. And of course, be really reminded how fragile life is, and that your business should support your life, not consume it. It should not be something that puts itself ahead of everything else, right? And so I started working with these people, and I started getting a lot of really amazing results. And you know, what was interesting is they were able to do all those things and get their life back and start taking real vacations and getting projects out that they always had in the back of their mind that could leverage their business and their time and their income. And, you know, everyone's got these, oh, I want to have a bigger impact on my audience. I want to run this event. I want to get this podcast out. I want to write a book. I want to do all this stuff. And they were able to start doing that, work less hours, make more money, and take real vacations. And that's then I said, okay, how can we help more people? And then I wrote the book, Win the Hour, Win the Day. So that was how it evolved.
And I hope people understand what Kris was just talking about. I know a lot of you listening are going through this process of trying to grow your business, and the way you think you have to do it is to just, there's this whole hustle mentality. Like, I'm just going to work and work and work. And I've got all these things I'm going to get done. And then the next day you're on a completely different list of things you got to get done. And there's nothing to kind of piece that together. So talk to me about some of the major mistakes that we were talking about a little bit before the call, some of the mistakes that small businesses make that keep them small and don't allow them to grow.
Yeah, that's a great question. What I would say, what most people find shocking, the first thing I would tell you is, I would say 99.5% of people, especially small business, they start their workday with their emails. And that's a real problem. And there's a whole lot we can talk about why that's a problem. And to simplify it, there's a whole bunch of studies, the way the brain works and all this other stuff. Think about it like your cell phone. And you start your day, it's fully charged. But the more things you have open in the background, you burn your battery down. So what happens, you dive into the email, your brain goes in all these different directions. Never mind that the outside forces are controlling your day and now you're reacting instead of planning, but you wear your battery down quicker from decision fatigue. So what you should really be doing is your most creative work first thing in the morning. And if you're saying, oh, but I have to scan it to make sure there's no problems and all this other stuff, you know, then that's a problem in itself. But also, would you pass up a meeting first thing in the morning with a really great, juicy potential client because you think, no, I have to be sitting at my desk to check my emails? You wouldn't do that. So then why can you not put your emails off for an hour or two? So the first big one I would say to people is being sort of on a digital leash to their emails and reacting and checking them constantly. You have no idea how much time you spend on emails if you don't allot a time. And what happens with that is you cannot improve. If you don't measure it, you can't improve it.
So how can you overcome that? I know a lot of people are trapped in this, and I know it's simple to say, you know, just move your dial over and just wait till a certain time to do emails. But what are some ways to maybe shake that loose a little bit? Because it's so ingrained in us, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
It's like we're wired for that. So how can we start that process?
Well, it's a bigger discussion. And what I would say to you is none of these things were taught to you and you didn't learn them in a day. So they do take a little bit of time. But the biggest thing I want people to understand, if nothing else, is your calendar is your time bank account, right? And people only use that for outside appointments. Like I have to go to the dentist or I have to meet a client, but they don't schedule their work on their calendar. And so what happens is that's like having, you know, people say to me, oh, well, I do that every day, so I don't put it on my calendar. Well, that's like saying, oh, but my car payment comes out every month of my bank account, but because it comes out every month, I don't count it, right? Well, the money has to be there or it's a problem. So what happens is you're using up time on your calendar. So to say to you, well, why don't you look at your emails at 10 instead of 9 a.m.? The first problem is you have nowhere where you have a plan laid out for your day. That's the biggest thing, is you do not have a blueprint or a GPS for your day for success. And that leads into probably what I would say is another thing, is people operating off a to-do list. So if you were, for example, going to go on a really big road trip, say from New York to California, if you plug that into the GPS, they would tell you what roads to take. You know, you would know what time you're going to arrive. You would know instantly when you went off course, blah, blah, blah. But if you had a to-do list, it would be money for gas, pack snacks, do this, bring a sweater. It wouldn't be action oriented. So a lot of small businesses that will remain small are living off to-do lists and not measuring their work outcome based on where it goes on their calendar. Because I'll tell you, with for myself or even my clients, when you start really filling in that calendar, you go, well, no wonder I didn't get all that done. Like, you might think that you have 8 hours today, but in fact, you might only have 4, because there's so many things you're not counting, right? So you're starting off with a real fundamental, weak, broken foundation, and then it just accelerates from there. You have the to-do list. I mean, I used to do that. I would go in Monday morning with the to-do list in my hand. I was going to take on the world. And you know, you don't realize that one thing on the list is 2 hours, another might be 2 days, and there's just no sequence or measurement of any of it. So then Monday night, you didn't get as much done as you wanted. You beat yourself up. You stay later. You start work Tuesday tired. It's just a cycle, you know, downward, really.
So overcoming that, and again, you're talking about it, this is a very big thing. And again, it's just something that we're used to doing for ourselves, right? I've got, oh, I've got to do this. I've got to do that. I've got to, you know, and it's just these little things all the way from personal life. I got to pick up the kids. I got to take, you know, and you just start making this list of things like a shopping list of all the stuff you got to get done. But for some reason, we just, like, that's just not productive, like you're saying. And it also is, actually is a very negative impact, is what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah.
It's not only that we're not accomplishing it, but because we're not accomplishing it, it makes us feel like whatever we did, like our day was kind of a waste, or that we lost time, or we wasted time, or we weren't a good, you know, we weren't running our good business well, or something's wrong. Just gives us all sorts of negative feedback, right?
It does. So, you know, our time today is put on the calendar. You know, it's going to take time. But then the big mistake that people don't make is they don't put their actions on the calendar. So whatever prep work it took for this meeting to be involved, like before the meeting, or what you have to do, prepare, or the follow-up of what you have to send it to the next person, that doesn't go on your calendar. So you have a team that takes care of this podcast, and you don't say, okay, tomorrow morning I don't know, I'm assuming you don't, because most people don't. So you probably do not have on your calendar that tomorrow morning I need a half hour to process this podcast and send it to the right people on my team and get it all done. You just think, okay, I booked Kris on my calendar, but then you don't have the actual work involved with that on your calendar. So where does that go? Like, what happens? So then you just, either things start falling off and you forget about them because they're on these to-do lists. And of course you keep adding to the top of the list, they move things down. But it's like having all your file drawers open. Your brain really wears down from that. You lack creativity. It definitely increases stress. And then you're just recycling stuff, and you're always trying to keep tabs on all this stuff that you're recycling. So it's really damaging to your productivity, to your efficiency, to your creativity, all that stuff.
Just to recap real quick, you're saying the first thing that one of the main troubles we have is checking our emails right away and going after that. Is that phone messages? That's anything, right? That's anything that's going to be putting something into our mind that we've got to take care of all these other things rather than what we're actually planning for, and the creative stuff we've got to get done that day, right? So
yeah.
That's the first thing. The second thing is actually planning our day out with a to-do list. That's a big no-no, because now we're going in and we're creating basically a step-by-step of how we're going to fail is what it sounds like, essentially.
Yeah.
So what's another thing that would keep a business from growing out and getting bigger? This is really, really good.
Well, I would say the third thing, which we did just mention, but I'll expand on that, is understanding that your calendar is your GPS to success. You cannot borrow or buy time. You cannot. So I don't care how thin or tall or rich you are, we have the same amount of hours in a day. And if you want to use them effectively, you have to, you know, you cannot improve what you don't measure. So you have to start filling those out. And no one has ever taught you that. Even when you were in post-secondary school, no matter how high your degree was, you know, you got a bunch of teachers or professors competing for your attention saying all this is due, but they're not showing you how to interact with others. And then that leads you to multitasking. And multitasking, more and more studies are coming out And people don't even realize when they're multitasking. Like, so we got all these studies showing that it decreases your productivity by 40%. New studies are coming out saying it drops your IQ about 15%. It's also showing that it's like being up all night, or as if you had, smoked drugs, smoked marijuana, that your brain stimuli, how it works when you're multitasking and you wear it all down, it numbs you down. It makes you dumber. And that's just, and I know, I thought because I cared so much about my business that I was different, that somehow my brain was wired different because I cared so much and I was so ambitious. And when you say that out loud, it doesn't make sense. But in your head, you think, no, you don't understand. I want this really bad. I'm really willing to work really hard. So that doesn't count on me. But if you have a human brain, then this is the problem that you're facing.
Which is, again, when you calendar things out, and like you said, and I'll kind of put it the other way, you have to, if you put something in your time, your calendar, you have to take something else out to put that in. It's just, these are just blocks of time. I've always looked at it in my schedule. I'm an entertainment guy. I love music. I love theater. And I look at this like a network TV station, and they are programming all their TV shows. And if you're going to put this 30-minute show and this 30-minute show, they get this board up there, and they know they can only run so many shows at a certain time. You can't put two shows in the same space, and it just doesn't work. So the same way, planning out your day, you have to be willing to say, okay, if I want to get this done, I've got to take something out of my life, because otherwise it's going to conflict.
Yeah. And a lot of my clients will say, well, you don't understand. I have a teenager. What if this happens? My car broke down. And I say to them, like, here's something that happened to me just last week. My cell phone, there was an issue with it. I called Apple. All of a sudden, 45 minutes later, I'm on the phone trying to get my phone fixed. It was finally fixed. Now, many years ago, I would have just accelerated my day, trying to catch up for that lost time, stress everyone out around me, go, go, go. What I did was I said, okay, I've lost an hour. Look at the calendar. What can be moved? What's the least priority? Okay, great. I did that. And then I proceeded with the day in a calm and clear fashion, which is interesting because a lot of my clients will tell me when they start doing this calmness and this clarity, they really enjoy it. But at the same time, they go, I'm used to being so busy that sometimes they realize, oh, if I get stuck on something, they realize their default used to be like, I'll go check emails so that I have a distraction or an excuse, right? So that we set ourselves up when you think, oh, this isn't working, I'll go do something else. And you're just creating busy work. So they see that now when their day does get a lot calmer. They really see the poor skills they put in place for distraction. And I also think that so many people don't even realize, like I was doing a podcast with somebody and I know she didn't mean to do it, but I could hear a chime and then I would see her eyes float across the bottom and she's reading an email that's floating by. And, then I could see her stammer because she wasn't 100% sure what I just said to her, but I couldn't stop talking because we're on a podcast and I didn't want to call her out on her podcast, right? But she didn't realize she was doing it until she fumbles afterwards. So that's another thing. In fairness to people, there's a lot of devices coming at you. And if you're not very purposeful, it's so easy to be seduced and think you need them or not realize that they're still going off.
It is amazing, and it's frustrating. I have a teenage daughter. It's very frustrating to see how much greater importance we put on a device getting our attention than just a face-to-face interaction with somebody. And that goes with your clients. It goes with, even if you're on, intentionally going in and doing, like you said, a podcast, you're doing a Facebook Live. I mean, I've seen people on a Facebook Live, they're hosting the Facebook Live, on their laptop or whatever, and literally pick up their phone and answer a text. I'm like, you're hosting this event. Like, who is texting you that? Anyway, but it's amazing. It's like suddenly that's like where our mindset is. So to keep yourself from staying a small business, you have to put these things aside and focus is what I'm hearing you say very, very loud and clear. And you've
Absolutely. First of all, I was stuck on the teenager part because she probably must look older than you. So I was like, okay, I can't hear what you're saying because the child must look older than you. But here's what I want people to understand. There is no such a thing as multitasking. What there is context switching. You cannot shine a flashlight on two separate things. You can rotate thoughts, but you cannot have your mind, just like when people say, oh no, I can hear you and they're texting, they can't, they context switch and they confuse that with sort of things like I can breathe and walk at the same time. That's not multitasking. Those are two different systems, right? But people confuse that. You cannot do two things at once. You can do two things poorly, But think of it like shining a flashlight on something. You cannot shine a flashlight in two different spots.
I love that. I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
And that is awesome. I'm actually going to do that little experiment with my daughter because it's the same.
Yeah.
And yes, I do have a teenage daughter. And yes, I am aware now of all the social media sites that I was not aware of, 5 years ago that are I'm now very active in. So Kris, this is super, super good stuff and very important because one of the things that I preach and promote on this podcast is we're trying to get people to have greater success. And when you get greater success, you make more money, you can serve more people. But by making these mistakes, you're going to keep yourself from that success and keep yourself small. I think a lot of our listeners, I think any of our listeners would get a tremendous amount of value just reaching out and hearing more from you and learning more from you and your business. Your book you mentioned. Can you just give me a few ways people can connect with you and a few things that might help them out?
Yeah, send me a message either through Instagram. It's the Kris Ward, KrisWard, and let me know that you heard me on this podcast. Like, let's start off, get the relationship a little stronger. Tell me that you heard me here, and that will get you my inbox. Also, you can find me on LinkedIn at Kris Ward, and you can always go to our page, wintheday.com.
That's awesome. I am so excited that you jumped onto the show, and I'd love to have you back again. This has been a great conversation, and you have a ton to share, so thank you.
Well, I will come back anytime you invite me, for sure.
Hey, there's nothing worse than going through all this time and work, learning about how to coach, learning about how to market yourself, get your message out there, organically connect with other coaches, pay for advertising, do all the things we need to do to market our business, and then you finally get on that sales call, and you freeze up, you choke up. You're so concerned about how much you're charging and you're just freaking out about telling them how much it's going to cost. It's not worth it. Listen, there's a simpler way, and I want to show you a very simple strategy to help ramp up your sales calls, your strategy sessions, your onboarding sessions, whatever you call it. I want you to go right now to strategysessionmastery.xyz. You're going to sign up. There's a free 3-day mastermind that's being held in October, and it's going to help you get past any of the barriers that are stopping you from onboarding high-ticket clients because, let's face it, if you do all this other work and you don't actually get the clients, it's not worth it. So go to strategysessionmastery.xyz right now and sign up for the 3-day masterclass.